In front of everyone, silence filled the room. No one expected that a simple gesture from a baby could reveal the truth and even make the millionaire emotional in front of the entire company. If you enjoy emotional stories, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're listening from. Continuing. Mary Ann Spencer was 23 years old when she first walked through the gates of the Upper East Side Manor condominium. It was a March morning in New York City, one of those days when the gray sky seemed to weigh on the shoulders of those hurrying along the city's uneven sidewalks. She held a worn canvas bag containing her documents, a change of clothes and a tattered notebook where she wrote down recipes her grandmother had taught her. She didn't have much more than that. The doorman, a middle-aged man in an impeccable uniform, looked her up and down before picking up the phone. Mary Ann knew that look. It was the same one she received at the supermarket when she passed the imported goods aisle, the same one she felt in shopping mall stores when she dared to try something on in the window. A look that said, "You don't belong here." But she had already learned to lift her chin and take a deep breath. She didn't have time to feel small. Not anymore. "It's the young woman for the nanny position," the doorman said into the intercom, with a tone that mixed disinterest and authority. "You can come up. Penthouse Block A." The elevator was mirrored, and Mary Ann avoided looking at her own reflection. She knew what she would see. A too-thin young woman with deep dark circles from sleepless nights, hair tied in a simple bun, clean but faded clothes. Nothing impressive, but her hands were firm, and her heart, despite everything, still beat with hope. When the penthouse door opened, Mary Ann was met by a tall man in a navy blue suit without a tie, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Robert Andrews had the kind of presence that filled a room. Broad shoulders, a strong jawline, dark eyes that seemed to be always calculating something. He was talking on his cell phone in English, gesticulating impatiently, and simply gestured for her to enter. The apartment was immense. Light marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the entire city. Modern furniture in shades of grey and white. Everything so clean, so organized, so empty. There were no photographs on the walls, no scattered toys, no sign of life beyond the cold, impersonal luxury. Mary Ann felt a pang in her chest. What kind of child grew up there? "Sorry," Robert said, finally hanging up the phone and turning his attention to her. His voice was deep, controlled. "You're Mary Ann, right? The agency sent me your resume. Do you have experience with babies?" "Yes, sir. I've taken care of my nephews since they were born. And I worked for 6 months with a family in Greenwich Village. I can provide references." Robert nodded but seemed distracted. He looked at his watch, a Rolex that probably cost more than Mary Ann would earn in an entire year. "Sophia is 1 year and 3 months old. My ex-wife. Well, she's no longer part of our lives. I need someone to stay with the baby during the day. Sometimes at night, too. I have meetings, trips." "Do you live far?" "In the Bronx, sir. But I can sleep here on the days you need me to." "You'll need to sleep here most of the time," he said dryly. "The salary covers that." "Any problem?" Mary Ann swallowed hard. The Bronx was more than 2 hours away, crossing the entire city by subway and bus. But she needed that job. She needed it badly. "No, sir." "No problem." It was then that they heard it, a sharp, desperate cry coming from one of the bedrooms. Robert closed his eyes and sighed as if that sound were an unbearable weight. "She's been like this since she woke up. The previous nanny quit yesterday. Said she couldn't take it anymore. Sophia doesn't sleep, doesn't eat properly, cries all the time. The doctors say it's nothing physical. But He hesitated, and for the first time Mary Ann saw something beyond the successful executive. She saw an exhausted, lost father. "I don't know what to do anymore." Without asking permission, Mary Ann followed the sound of the crying. She entered the nursery, decorated in pastel shades but with the same coldness as the rest of the apartment. In the hardwood crib, a little girl with brown, loose curls thrashed about, her face red and wet with tears. "Hi, my love," Mary Ann said softly, approaching slowly. "Hi, Sophia. It's okay now." The baby stopped crying for an instant, surprised by the new voice. Her green eyes, so much like her father's, fixed on Mary Ann. There was something in that gaze, something that made the young woman's heart ache. It was loneliness. Such a small child, and she already knew loneliness. Mary Ann extended her arms. "May I?" she asked, but didn't wait for an answer. She picked Sophia up carefully, adjusting her little head on her shoulder, rocking her gently, and began to hum. It was nothing elaborate, just a lullaby her grandmother used to sing about little birds and the blue sky. The melody was simple, almost without words, but laden with something that apartment lacked: true love. Sophia sobbed a few more times, clung to the fabric of Mary Ann's blouse, and gradually calmed down. Her tense little body relaxed. Her breathing slowed, and in less than 5 minutes, the baby fell asleep. Robert stood in the doorway of the room, watching everything with an expression Mary Ann couldn't decipher. Astonishment, relief, perhaps a bit of both. "How did you—" he began, but stopped. "She doesn't sleep in anyone's arms. Not even mine." "Children feel when we are truly present," Mary Ann replied softly, still cradling Sophia. "They need to feel safe, loved." There was an uncomfortable silence. Robert looked away. "You're hired. Start today. I'll ask Vanessa, my secretary, to prepare the contract papers. There's a staff room in the back. You can settle in." And so, without much ceremony, Mary Ann became part of that household. In the first few days, she observed everything carefully. Robert left early, sometimes before sunrise, and returned late when Sophia was already asleep. He barely looked at his daughter. It wasn't coldness, Mary Ann realized over time. It was fear. Fear of not knowing how to be a father, fear of failing, fear of forming bonds and losing them as he had lost his wife. The absence of a mother was palpable in that house. No one spoke about her, but Mary Ann overheard whispered conversations between the cook, who came twice a week, and the driver. Robert's ex-wife was a model, had suffered severe postpartum depression, and one day simply left. She left the baby, her husband, her entire life behind. No one knew where she was. Some people commented that she was in Europe. Others said she had checked into a clinic. Robert never spoke about the subject, never. But Sophia was different with Mary Ann. The connection between them grew so fast it was almost frightening. The baby only wanted to eat if Mary Ann was nearby. She only slept if she was in her arms. When Mary Ann left her field of vision, even for a minute, Sophia would start to cry. It wasn't a whiny cry. It was panic, abandonment, fear of being left behind again. "She's very attached to you," Robert commented one night when he finally got home before 10. Mary Ann was in the living room, with Sophia sleeping in her lap as she watched a silent movie on TV. "Children need connection," Mary Ann replied, stroking the girl's curls. "She's just looking for what she hasn't had until now." Robert sat on the sofa next to her, keeping his distance. He seemed uncomfortable with that scene of domestic intimacy. "Do you have siblings?" "Family?" he asked, and Mary Ann was surprised. It was the first time he had shown interest in knowing anything about her. "I have 2 younger siblings. My mother works as a cleaner in 3 different houses. My father, he's no longer with us." Mary Ann didn't go into detail. She didn't need to. The story was old and common. A man who left when money got tight, leaving a woman and 3 children behind. "And why didn't you finish your studies?" Robert asked, and there was no judgment in his voice, just curiosity. "Because food on the table and paid rent are more urgent than a degree," Mary Ann said simply. "But I will go back. Someday I want to be a teacher." Robert remained silent for a long moment, watching his daughter sleep peacefully, something he couldn't do. "She likes you," he said finally. "Sophia, she's never been like this with anyone, not even with me." There was pain in those words, a deep pain that Mary Ann recognized. It was the pain of someone who felt inadequate, who carried silent guilt. "It's not because she doesn't love you, Mr. Andrews. It's because you're not present. Children don't need expensive toys or decorated rooms. They need to be held, to have eye contact, to know they won't be abandoned." Robert looked at her, and for the first time, Mary Ann saw something change in his eyes. It wasn't anger at the harsh sincerity. It was recognition, as if someone finally had said aloud what he already knew but refused to admit. "You're different from the other nannies," he said. "I'm not a nanny. I'm someone who takes care of a child who needs love. It's different." And it truly was. Weeks passed, and Mary Ann became the center of Sophia's universe. A routine was established: waking up early, preparing breakfast, playing on the living room rug with building blocks, going for short walks in the condominium park, always with the baby in her arms or stroller, singing, talking, creating memories. Sophia began to smile, then to laugh. That delightful, spontaneous laugh that filled Mary Ann's heart with something she couldn't name but felt as purpose. Robert began to come home earlier. Not every day, but some, and he would stay there watching. He saw how Mary Ann bathed Sophia, how she made faces to get her to eat, how she invented stories using her hands as puppets. He saw how happy his daughter was, perhaps for the first time in her life, and something in him also began to change. It was on a May afternoon, when New York City's sky finally gave a reprieve and a timid sun appeared, that everything began to fall apart. Sophia had had a fever since the night before. Nothing alarming, just that common teething fever in babies. But the next morning, the temperature rose to 101 degrees Fahrenheit, and Mary Ann became worried. She tried to call Robert, but he was in a meeting with international investors and didn't answer. She called his secretary, Vanessa, a woman with a cold voice and rehearsed politeness. "Dr. Andrews cannot be disturbed right now," Vanessa said impatiently. "If it's urgent, take the child to the pediatrician. There's an authorization in his office drawer. Use it." Mary Ann found the paper, a statement signed by the secretary on Robert's behalf, authorizing Mary Ann Spencer, holder of such-and-such ID, to take Sophia Andrews, the businessman's daughter, for medical attention in case of emergency. Everything correct, everything legal. She grabbed her bag with the baby's documents, dressed Sophia carefully, called an Uber, and left. The pediatrician's office was in Chelsea, 15 minutes away. The doctor examined Sophia, diagnosed a mild throat infection, and prescribed antibiotics. Nothing serious. Mary Ann sighed in relief, paid for the consultation with the corporate card Robert had given her for emergencies, and returned to the car. It was on Park Avenue that everything went wrong. The Uber driver was stopped at a routine police checkpoint. 2 police officers approached, asked for documents. One of them looked at the back seat, saw Sophia in the car seat, looked at Mary Ann and frowned. "Is this child yours?" The officer, a robust man with a grizzled mustache, asked. "I take care of her. I'm the nanny. She had a fever. I took her to the doctor," Mary Ann explained, already feeling her heart race. That tone of voice. She knew that tone. Child's documents. Mary Ann handed over the birth certificate she always carried in her bag. The officer read it, looked at the baby's photo, looked at Mary Ann. "You don't have the same last name. Where's the mother?" "The mother doesn't live with them." "I have authorization from the father." "It's right here." Mary Ann handed over the paper with the secretary's signature. The officer read it but didn't seem convinced. This wasn't signed by the father. It was signed by a certain Vanessa. "You might be taking this child without authorization. He'll need to confirm. Please, sir, you can call her father. Everything's fine, I swear." Desperation began to tighten Mary Ann's throat. "Step out of the vehicle now." What happened next was too fast and too slow at the same time. Mary Ann was put in the patrol car, with Sophia in her arms crying desperately. Taken to the police station, placed in a cold interrogation room, where uniformed men looked at her as if she were a criminal, a kidnapper, someone capable of taking a child from her own family. She tried to explain. She tried to call Robert, but the corporate cell phone had been confiscated. And no one believed her. No one listened. "Do you think we're idiots?" said the detective, a middle-aged man with tired eyes. "Every week there's a case of a nanny disappearing with a child. You don't have the same last name. You don't have valid authorization from the father, and you're walking around with the daughter of a rich businessman. What did you expect?" "I expected to be treated like a person," Mary Ann replied, her voice trembling but firm. "Not like a criminal." Sophia cried non-stop, calling for her, but they wouldn't let her hold the baby. They said they needed to wait for the legal guardians to arrive, and the hours dragged on. 2, 3, 4 hours, until finally the door opened, and Robert Andrews walked in, his suit rumpled, his face distraught, his eyes desperately searching for his daughter. That's when everything, absolutely everything, changed forever. Robert Andrews had never felt such fear in his life, not when he closed his first $1 million deal, not when he faced the company's imminent bankruptcy years ago, not when he saw his wife leave without looking back. This fear was different. It was visceral, desperate, suffocating. When Vanessa called informing him that Mary Ann had taken Sophia to the doctor without his direct authorization, something in him panicked. An irrational panic, fueled by newspaper stories. by cases he heard at business lunches, by a past he couldn't overcome. His ex-wife had left. What if Mary Ann also took his daughter? What if he lost Sophia forever? He didn't think twice. He called the police, reported a possible kidnapping, but now, standing in that cold, impersonal police station, seeing his daughter in the arms of an unknown police officer, crying hysterically, and seeing Mary Ann sitting on a plastic chair with red, swollen eyes, he understood the magnitude of the mistake he had made. "Mr. Andrews," the detective approached formally, "we've confirmed the employee's identity. The condominium cameras show her leaving with the child around 10 in the morning with a bag of medical documents. There's also a record at the pediatrician's office of a consultation made about 6 hours ago. The statement written by your secretary was accepted by the clinic. Technically, everything was in order." Robert looked at Mary Ann. She didn't look back. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor, her shoulders hunched as if trying to make herself invisible. He knew that posture. He had seen it in people who had been broken, humiliated, destroyed from within. "Can she leave?" Robert asked, his voice rougher than he intended. "Yes, we're releasing her now. But, Mr. Andrews, you made a serious accusation. You accused this young woman of kidnapping. That's not a simple matter. If she wishes, she can sue for emotional distress." Mary Ann looked up then, and Robert felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. There was no anger in that gaze. There was disappointment, pain, betrayal. "I just want to leave," she said, her voice almost inaudible. "Can I take Sophia?" The police officer holding the baby hesitated, looked at the detective, who nodded. Mary Ann stood up slowly, as if every movement pained her, and extended her arms. As soon as Sophia saw who it was, she lunged forward, clinging to Mary Ann's neck with desperate strength. The baby whimpered, sobbed, buried her face in her shoulder. "Mommy, Mommy," Sophia babbled between sobs. The silence in the police station was absolute. Robert felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. That was his daughter's first clear word, and she didn't say it to him. She said it to a woman he had just unjustly accused, treated like a criminal, publicly humiliated. Mary Ann closed her eyes, hugging Sophia tightly, and a solitary tear rolled down her face. She said nothing. She didn't need to. That moment said everything. "Mary Ann," Robert began, taking a step forward. She raised her hand, the gesture simple but firm. "No, please, not now." And she left, carrying Sophia, leaving Robert alone with the overwhelming weight of what he had done. The drive home was silent. Robert drove his own car, something rare. He usually had a driver, but that day he needed to feel in control of something, anything. Mary Ann was in the back seat with Sophia finally sleeping in her lap, exhausted from crying so much. He tried to speak a few times. He opened his mouth, searched for words, but nothing he said seemed sufficient. "Sorry?" As if apologies could erase hours of embarrassment, of being treated like a criminal, of having her dignity trampled. He didn't know how to fix it. He didn't know if it was possible to fix. When they arrived at the apartment, Mary Ann went straight to Sophia's room. She carefully laid the baby in the crib, covered her with the soft blanket, kissed her forehead. And then she simply left. She went to the staff room in the back, closed the door, and didn't come out again. Robert stayed in the living room, sitting on the Italian leather sofa that cost a fortune but had never felt so uncomfortable. He ran a hand over his face, exhausted. He had built an empire, closed deals on 3 continents, but there that night, he felt like the biggest failure in the world. He picked up his cell phone and called Vanessa. "Hello?" Her voice sounded efficient, even though it was almost midnight. "Why didn't you tell me earlier that Mary Ann was taking Sophia to the doctor?" he asked, trying to keep calm. "I did, Robert. I left a message with your assistant. You were in a meeting with the Koreans, remember? Couldn't be interrupted." There was a pause. "Did something happen?" Robert told her. He heard the calculated silence on the other end of the line. "Well, maybe it was good that this happened," Vanessa said finally. "Now you know you can't trust her completely. She's just an employee, Robert. A stranger taking care of your daughter. You need someone with more boat credentials. I can look for a better agency with certified nannies with degrees." "Vanessa, I didn't call asking for your opinion," Robert said coldly. "I called to inform you of what happened. Good night." He hung up before she could reply. Something in the way Vanessa spoke bothered him. There was a tone there, a subtle satisfaction that he couldn't identify. but he was too tired to think about it now. In the days that followed, the house became a territory of silences. Marianne cared for Sophia with the same dedication as always, but now there was an invisible wall between her and Robert. They no longer talked. When he arrived, she would simply inform him about the baby's routine and withdraw. No small comments about the day, no shy smiles, no humanity. Robert felt the absence of those moments. He missed seeing Marianne laughing with Sophia in the living room, hearing her silly songs, finding notes on the refrigerator saying she had saved food for him. The house was functioning, but it was dead. Sophia felt it too. The baby began to throw tantrums, something she never did. She cried when she saw her father, extended her arms to Marianne, as if she constantly needed to confirm that she wouldn't leave. It was Vanessa who suggested dinner. "You need to relax, Robert. You're tense, tired, hardly sleeping. Shall we have dinner? There's that new restaurant in Soho that's impossible to get a table at, but I used your contacts and got a reservation for tonight." Robert hesitated. Going out felt wrong, but staying in that suffocating apartment was also unbearable. "All right, 8 o'clock?" "Perfect," Vanessa said, and there was something in her voice he didn't identify. Something like victory. When he arrived home to get ready, he found Marianne feeding Sophia dinner. The baby was eating vegetable puree, making that adorable mess children make, and Marianne cleaned her face with infinite patience. "I'm going out for dinner," Robert said, standing in the kitchen doorway. "I'll be back late. Are you? Is everything okay?" Marianne looked at him just for a second. "Yes, sir? Sir?" She was calling him sir again, and that hurt more than Robert expected. Dinner with Vanessa was elegant, expensive, and absolutely empty. She talked about business, about the latest investments, about his need to expand into the Asian market. She wore a tight black dress, her hair perfectly brushed, and expensive perfume. She was beautiful, Robert knew. Many men at the company commented. But looking at her, he could only think about how rehearsed, how artificial it all seemed. Vanessa leaned across the table, revealing more of her cleavage. "You deserve to relax, Robert. You've been carrying the world on your shoulders alone for so long." She placed her hand on his. "It doesn't have to be like this. I could help more, in other ways." Robert gently but firmly withdrew his hand. "Vanessa, you are my secretary, an excellent secretary, but that's all." Her smile faltered just for a second, but it was long enough for Robert to see something he hadn't noticed before, an obsession, a possessive desire. "Of course," she said, regaining her composure. "It was just a moment of openness, forget I said it." But Robert didn't forget, and when he returned home it was past 11. Something in him was different, more alert. He found the apartment silent. He went to Sophia's room just to check. The baby slept peacefully, hugging a teddy bear. Marianne was sitting in a chair beside the crib, also asleep, her head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. Robert stood there watching. Marianne's face was serene in sleep, despite everything. She looked younger like that, more fragile. And he realized he knew almost nothing about her. He didn't know her dreams, her fears, what truly made her smile. He had a woman living in his house, taking care of the most precious thing in his world, and he treated her like furniture. He felt ashamed. Carefully, he took a blanket from the closet and placed it over Marianne's shoulders. She stirred slightly, but didn't wake up. Robert left the room silently and went to his own room, but he couldn't sleep. Something was wrong. He felt it, and in the following days he started paying attention. Small things. Marianne always seemed surprised when she found objects out of place. Once, she looked for Sophia's favorite pacifier for 15 minutes, swearing she had left it on the dresser, but found it in the bathroom. Another time, the powdered milk she was sure was full was almost empty. The clothes she had set aside for Sophia in the morning disappeared, and later appeared inside Robert's bedroom closet. "I'm going crazy," Marianne muttered one day, looking for the keys to the medicine cabinet. "I swore I left them here." Robert began to observe more, and he noticed something. Whenever these confusions happened, Vanessa had been in the apartment. She often came by, bringing documents for him to sign, picking up contracts, leaving pending matters. She had free access, always had. It was on a Tuesday afternoon that suspicion turned into certainty. Robert arrived home earlier than usual, a rarity. He found Vanessa in the hallway near Mary Ann's room. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Vanessa turned quickly. She smiled. "I was looking for you. I need an urgent signature." She held up a folder. "My office is on the other side of the apartment." "I know. I got lost." The smile didn't falter. "This place is huge." Robert said nothing, but he began to put the pieces together. It was Mary Ann who finally discovered it. She had hidden her old cell phone, the one she no longer used, inside Sophia's crib, continuously recording video during the day. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she knew something was happening. Her things disappeared, appeared in strange places, and she began to doubt her own sanity. Until, on a Thursday, when she checked the recording, she saw it. Vanessa entering her room, opening drawers, taking a silver bracelet, the only piece of jewelry Mary Ann had, a gift from her grandmother, and hiding it inside her own purse. Then she rummaged through the wardrobe, purposefully messed up some objects and left. Mary Ann felt her blood run cold. So that was it. Someone was sabotaging her. And it wasn't just anyone. It was Robert's secretary, the woman who had access to everything, who was always around, who looked at her with that little sneer of contempt every time they met. With trembling hands, Mary Ann copied the video to a USB drive she kept with her documents. She didn't know what to do with it. She didn't know if Robert would believe her. After all, he had already proven he didn't trust her. But she had to try. Because if she did nothing, Vanessa would continue, and next time it could be worse, much worse. That night when Robert arrived, Mary Ann was waiting for him in the living room. Sophia was already asleep. "Mr. Andrews, I need to speak with you." He stopped, surprised. It was the first time in weeks she had initiated a conversation. "Of course, what is it?" Mary Ann took a deep breath and handed him the USB drive. "Watch this, please." And when Robert connected the USB drive to the computer and saw the images, when he saw Vanessa invading Mary Ann's room, stealing, sabotaging, his world collapsed once more. But this time he knew exactly what to do. Robert Andrews watched the video 3 times. The first time he felt shock, the second, anger, the third, a cold, calculated fury he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the explosive, noisy kind of anger. It was something more dangerous, absolute determination. Vanessa Moore had worked with him for 5 years, 5 years of trust, unrestricted access, confidential information. She knew his schedule, his passwords, his contacts. She was efficient, punctual, always anticipating his needs. He considered her indispensable, and now he discovered she was a snake. "How long has this been going on?" he asked Mary Ann, still looking at the frozen computer screen where Vanessa appeared with her hand inside the staff room drawer. "I'm not sure. Weeks, perhaps. I started noticing things out of place right after that day at the police station." Mary Ann's voice was controlled, but Robert heard the tremor in it. "At first I thought I was imagining it, but then I noticed a pattern. Whenever she came here, something disappeared or moved." Robert stood up, walked to the window. New York City glittered below, millions of lights, millions of lives. And there, at the top of that luxurious building, a silent war was being waged. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Mary Ann gave a humorless chuckle. "You reported me for kidnapping. Why would I think you'd believe me?" The truth of those words hit Robert like a slap. She was right. He had destroyed any basis of trust between them. And now, even with proof, she still doubted he would side with her. "I believe you," he said, turning to face her, "and I'm going to fix this. But I need to do it the right way. If Vanessa is doing this, it's probably not just out of gratuitous malice. There's something more behind it." "She likes you," Mary Ann said simply. "Anyone can see it." Robert blinked, surprised. "What?" "The way she looks at you, the way she always finds excuses to be near, the way she looks at me." Mary Ann crossed her arms, a defensive gesture. "She sees me as a threat. But you're my employee. There's nothing between us. She doesn't know that, or doesn't want to believe it." Mary Ann sighed. "Obsessed people don't think rationally, Mr. Andrews." Robert thought of dinner. Vanessa's touch on his hand, the way she leaned across the table, and he understood that Mary Ann was right. I'm going to install cameras, he decided, in all common areas, without telling anyone. If Vanessa continues, we'll have more proof. And then, I'll expose everything. Expose how? In the worst possible way for her. Robert had that look Mary Ann had seen before when he closed deals on the phone. It was the look of a predator. Publicly. In the following days, discreet micro-cameras were installed in the living room, the hallway, the kitchen. Even in Robert's office. He didn't tell anyone, not even the cook who came twice a week. Only Mary Ann knew. And they waited. It didn't take long, 3 days. Later, Vanessa appeared at the apartment with some excuse about urgent documents. Robert was purposely at an external meeting. Mary Ann stayed in the room with Sophia, door locked as they had agreed. The cameras captured everything. Vanessa entered Mary Ann's room again. This time, she didn't steal anything. She did worse. She took a jewelry box that she herself had placed there days before. Expensive jewelry, probably stolen or bought for incrimination, and strategically positioned it inside the closet in the back, as if Mary Ann were hiding it. Then she took photos with her cell phone, but she didn't stop there. She went to the kitchen, picked up a used glass, cleaned it well, and placed drops of something from a small vial. It wasn't possible to see what it was on the cameras, but the intention was clear. Then she placed the glass in the sink, as if it were just common dirty dishware. Robert watched everything in real time, through the app connected to his phone, and he felt a chill down his spine. This wasn't just sabotage. It was an attempt at complete destruction. Vanessa was building a case, creating false evidence, probably to accuse Mary Ann of theft and perhaps something worse. He waited for Vanessa to leave. Waited an hour, and then he called her. Vanessa, I need you here tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I'm having a meeting with the entire executive board. You'll need to take minutes. The entire board? She seemed surprised. That wasn't on the agenda. It's urgent. Confidential matter. Don't mention it to anyone. Of course, Robert. I'll handle it. Her tone was sweet, helpful, as it always was. The next morning, Robert arrived at the office early. The mirrored glass commercial building on Wall Street was imposing. 15 entire floors of Andrews Investments. He greeted employees, took the private elevator, and went straight to the main conference room. At 10 o'clock sharp, the directors were all there. 12 executives, including the CFO, the HR director, the legal chief, all serious, curious about the urgent summons. Vanessa was sitting at the end of the oval table, with her tablet ready to take notes, wearing an impeccable grey suit, hair pulled back in a bun. Professional as always. Good morning, everyone, Robert began, standing at the head of the table. Thank you for coming on such short notice. The matter I'm addressing today is delicate and, unfortunately, very serious. The directors exchanged glances. In recent months, I discovered that there is a person within this company, with privileged access, who has used their position to commit criminal acts. Sabotage, invasion of privacy, falsification of evidence, and attempted incrimination of third parties. The silence was absolute. Vanessa stopped typing on her tablet, but maintained a neutral expression. As you all know, I have a young daughter. I hired a nanny a few months ago, a young woman named Mary Ann Spencer. She takes care of Sophia with exceptional dedication. My daughter loves her. But recently I started noticing strange behaviors. Robert walked slowly around the table, objects disappearing, appearing in unusual places. My employee being constantly sabotaged, questioned, having her sanity doubted. Vanessa swallowed hard. Robert saw it. So I installed security cameras in my home. And what I discovered was disturbing. He picked up the remote control and turned on the room's large screen. The first video began to play. Vanessa entering Mary Ann's room, taking the bracelet. The directors watched in tense silence. That was 2 weeks ago, Robert narrated. Theft of personal belongings. Then the situation escalated. The second video, Vanessa planting jewelry in the closet, taking photos, creation of false evidence, attempted incrimination. And then the third video, the glass, the drops. Yesterday my secretary placed an unknown substance in a glass in the kitchen, after which she positioned this glass in such a way that it appeared to be for common domestic use. I had the contents analyzed. Robert paused, looking directly at Vanessa. It was a sedative, in a dose high enough to sedate a child. My daughter specifically. The directors erupted in shocked murmurs. Vanessa turned white. That's a lie. She stood up, her voice sharp. This is a setup. This employee is manipulating you, Robert. She wants your money. She's using the child to... Enough. Robert's voice cut through the air like a blade. I saw it. Everyone here saw it. There are cameras, Vanessa. Irrefutable proof. And you know it. Vanessa's tears came, but they weren't of regret. They were of pure hatred. She doesn't deserve you. Vanessa screamed, completely losing her composure. I've been by your side for 5 years. I know everything about you. I would be perfect for you, for your daughter. But no, you choose some random employee, a nobody, You're fired, Robert said coldly, for cause. And you're being criminally prosecuted. The police have already been notified. The company's lawyers are preparing the case for attempted homicide as you put a child's life at risk. 2 security guards entered the room. Vanessa looked around, desperate, seeking support. She found nothing but shocked and repulsed gazes. You'll regret this, she hissed as she was escorted out. Everyone will know who she really is. I'll destroy you, Robert. And that lowlife, too. The door closed. The silence in the room was deafening. Robert took a deep breath. I apologize for exposing you to this, but I needed everyone to know the truth. And I needed witnesses. The HR director spoke first. Did we do a background check when we hired her? Did she undergo a psychological evaluation? Yes, all standard. Robert rubbed his face. Sometimes people break. Or they were always like this and just hid it well. In the days that followed, the company went into shock. The news of Vanessa's dismissal spread quickly. Employees whispered, looked at Robert with a mixture of pity and admiration. He had done the right thing, but the personal cost was high. But Robert underestimated something. Vanessa's revenge was just beginning. A week later, stories began appearing on gossip blogs. Millionaire businessman involved with domestic employee. Nanny seduces rich boss while caring for baby. Ex-secretary reveals manipulation scheme in traditional New York family. The headlines were sensational, the information distorted. Photos of Mary Ann, taken who knows how, appeared next to photos of Robert. Dirty insinuations, cruel judgments, prejudiced comments. The internet is relentless when it wants to destroy someone. And Vanessa knew exactly how to feed that machine. Mary Ann began to be recognized on the street. People pointed, took hidden photos, made comments. That's her, the opportunist. She must have set it all up to get his money. Poor first wife cheated on by an employee. The truth didn't matter. The narrative was already built. Robert tried to fight back. He published statements, called lawyers, requested content removal. But the internet doesn't forget, and the more he tried to protect Mary Ann, the more the speculations grew. That's when his mother appeared. Beatrice Andrews was a 65-year-old woman, elegant, educated, and absolutely ruthless. She came from a traditional New York family, one of those with an important surname and photos in society columns. She had never approved of Robert's marriage to a model, and she certainly didn't approve of the presence of a domestic employee in his life now. She arrived unannounced, on a rainy afternoon. She entered the apartment as if she owned it, greeted her grandson with formal kisses, and found Mary Ann in the living room, playing with Sophia on the rug. You must be Mary Ann, Beatrice said, and there was ice in that polite voice. Mary Ann stood up, holding Sophia in her arms. Good afternoon. Ma'am, I need to speak with you, alone. Beatrice looked at Robert. Son, would you excuse us? Robert hesitated, but Mary Ann nodded slightly. He left, but stayed in the hallway, close enough to hear if anything got out of control. Beatrice sat on the sofa, crossed her legs, and went straight to the point. How much do you want? Mary Ann blinked, confused. Pardon? Don't play innocent, dear. How much do you want to leave my sons and my granddaughters' lives? 500,000? $1 million? Beatrice opened her purse, took out a checkbook. I can sign it now. You disappear, never come back, don't sue, don't talk to the press. A new life far from here. Mary Ann felt as if she had been slapped. Ma'am, do you think I'm here for money? Everyone is somewhere for money, dear. The difference is that some of us have the decency not to sell ourselves so cheaply. Beatrice distilled venom with every word. You may have fooled my son with your Cinderella story, but you don't fool me. I know people like you. Opportunists, exploiters, calculators. Tears came to Mary Ann's eyes, but she held them back. She wasn't going to give this woman the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "I love this child," Mary Ann said, her voice trembling but firm, "and I'm not here to take anything from anyone. I'm here because Sophia needs me. And I need her. Emotional need doesn't pay bills, dear, and Sophia doesn't need you. She needs her family, her real family. We can hire someone suitable, someone with training, with real references, someone who won't cause all this scandal." "No," Mary Ann said, and the firmness in her voice surprised even herself. "I'm not leaving. I won't accept your money. I won't leave Sophia." Beatrice narrowed her eyes. "You'll regret that choice. When the press finishes with you, when society crucifies you, when my son finally opens his eyes and sees that he's being manipulated, you'll wish you had accepted my offer." "Then so be it," Mary Ann replied, "but I'll leave with my dignity intact. Something money can't buy, ma'am." It was then that Robert entered the room, his dark eyes burning with rage. "Mother, get out of my house now." Beatrice stood up, composing herself. "Robert, I'm trying to protect you." "Protect?" Robert gave a humorless laugh. "Mother, you just tried to buy a person who cares for your granddaughter with more love than you ever showed me." The silence was cutting. "Son, please, leave." Beatrice looked at her son, at Mary Ann, at Sophia, and then, without another word, she picked up her purse and left. Mary Ann collapsed onto the sofa as soon as the door closed, tears finally falling. Robert sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance, but there, present. "I'm sorry," he said. "My mother is complicated." "She's right," Mary Ann sobbed. "I don't belong in this world. I never will." "Maybe not," Robert said, and when Mary Ann looked at him surprised, he continued, "But Sophia belongs to you. And maybe, just maybe, I'm also starting to understand where I truly belong." And for the first time in weeks, something changed between them. Something small, fragile but real. A beginning. The months that followed were the most difficult of Mary Ann's life. The media exposure did not diminish. On the contrary, it grew. Vanessa, even facing criminal charges, managed to feed the gossip machine with new lies, new angles, new ways to distort the truth. A famous influencer, one of those who thrive on exposing other people's lives, was hired by her. No one knew where the money came from, probably her savings or some ally, but the damage was real. YouTube videos, Twitter posts, Instagram stories, the truth about the opportunistic nanny, how an employee destroyed a rich family, businessman manipulated by calculating staff member. The comments were cruel. "These employees know what they're doing. Poor man fell for her tricks. I bet she already knew he was rich when she took the job. She must have hit on him from day one." Mary Ann stopped reading, stopped searching her name, stopped trying to defend herself, because she realized something. No matter what she said, there would always be people ready to believe the worst. Prejudice was so deeply rooted that the truth was irrelevant. Robert also suffered. At the company, shareholders began to speak out. They called, sent emails, scheduled meetings. The discourse was always similar. "This is tarnishing the company's image. We need to think about reputation. Perhaps it's best for you to distance yourself from this situation." In a tense meeting with 3 of the largest investors, one of them, a grizzled man in a pinstripe suit, said what everyone was thinking. "Robert, you built this company from scratch. You have an important legacy, but you're throwing it all away for an employee. Understand, it's not personal. It's business. The press is destroying you. Clients are questioning. You need to make a decision." "And what decision would that be?" Robert asked coldly. "Distance yourself from her publicly. Hire someone else to care for the child. Show that it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. Damage control." The investor spoke as if describing a business plan. "It's simple, calculated, efficient." Robert looked at the 3 men in the room. Powerful, rich, respected men. Men who never had to choose between reputation and truth because they always had the privilege of never being challenged. "No," he said. "What?" "I will not distance myself from her. I will not throw Mary Ann to the wolves to save my image." Robert stood up. "And if you can't understand that, perhaps you should reconsider your investments here. The silence was heavy. "Robert, be reasonable." "I am reasonable. I am being the most reasonable I have ever been in my life." Robert walked to the window, looking at the city below. "I spent years building this company, thinking that success was measured in zeros in the bank account, in awards, in recognition. And it was empty, completely empty, until a 23-year-old woman, who earns less in a year than I spend in a week, taught me what truly matters." "And what would that be?" one of the investors asked, skeptical. "Being present, loving unconditionally, fighting for what's right even when it's difficult." Robert turned to them. "My daughter calls Mary Ann Mommy. Do you know why? Because Mary Ann is the only one who is there, every day, in every cry, in every smile, in every moment. While I was here closing deals and thinking I was important. So forgive me if I choose the woman who truly loves my daughter, instead of protecting the image of men who only care about numbers." The investors left that meeting without an answer. But Robert knew there were consequences coming. It was Mary Ann who, in a moment of desperation, considered giving up. "Maybe your mother was right," she said one night after Sophia fell asleep. Robert had stayed for dinner, something that was becoming routine. "Maybe I should leave. You're losing everything because of me." "You're not losing anything worth keeping," Robert said, putting down his fork. "Mary Ann, I spent my entire life building walls, protections, keeping my distance from everything and everyone. And the result? An empty apartment, a daughter who didn't know me, a life that seemed like success but was a prison. But your company, it will survive. Or it won't. And if it doesn't survive, I'll build another one. But I won't build another Sophia. I won't have another chance to be the father she deserves. And I won't—" he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I won't let you leave without a fight." Mary Ann looked at him, and for the first time she saw beyond the businessman, the boss, the rich and powerful man. She saw a human being, flawed, scared, trying to do the best he could with what he had. "I don't know if I can continue like this," she admitted, her voice breaking. "It's too much pressure, too much judgment. I feel dirty, Robert, as if I've done something wrong just by existing." "You haven't done anything wrong." Robert extended his hand across the table, stopping inches from hers. "And I'm going to prove it. To you, to my daughter, to everyone who is judging without knowing anything." 3 weeks later, Andrews Investments held its annual gala event. It was the biggest corporate event of the year, with over 300 guests, investors, partners, important clients, specialized press. Everything took place in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, with panoramic views of Fifth Avenue. Robert had expressly forbidden Mary Ann to go, not out of shame but for protection. He knew the press would be there, that gossip would circulate, that it would be a minefield. Mary Ann agreed, relieved. She would stay home with Sophia. But fate had other plans. Sophia, who only had a slight cough in the morning, had a fever spike in the late afternoon. Mary Ann tried to control it, gave her antipyretics, applied compresses. But the fever wouldn't go down. It went from 101 to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. The baby cried, inconsolable, asking for her father. Mary Ann had no choice. She picked up Sophia, wrapped her in a coat, and went to the hotel. When she arrived in the lobby, security tried to stop her. "The event is private, ma'am." But Sophia screamed, "Daddy! Daddy!" and people began to turn to notice. Mary Ann, in her simple clothes, hair tied in a hasty ponytail, holding a crying baby in her arms. And then someone recognized her. "It's her, the nanny." Whispers spread like wildfire. Cell phones were raised. Photos began to be taken. Mary Ann felt the world collapse. But Sophia cried, called for her father, and that was more important than anything. It was then that Sophia saw Robert, far back in the ballroom, talking with a group of executives. The little girl struggled in Mary Ann's arms with surprising strength for someone so small. And then she simply escaped. She got down from her lap with that clumsy skill of a child learning to walk, and ran. She crossed the entire ballroom, stumbling, getting up, crying, calling, "Mummy, Mummy!" But she wasn't calling Robert. She was calling Mary Ann. The entire ballroom stopped. 300 people, including reporters, investors, New York City's financial elite, watched a 1.5-year-old baby run desperately back into the arms of a woman everyone had judged, condemned, despised. Mary Ann knelt, opening her arms, Sophia threw herself into them, clinging with all her might, sobbing on her shoulder. "Mummy, mummy, mummy!" And the silence was absolute. Robert felt something break inside him. All the restraint, all the control, all the protection he had built throughout his life. It crumbled. He walked to the stage, picked up the microphone that had been prepared for the night's formal speeches. Everyone's eyes turned to him. "Good evening," he began, and his voice echoed through the ballroom. "I know you're all curious about what you just witnessed, so I'll tell you a story." Someone tried to interrupt, but Robert raised his hand. "A few months ago, I hired a young woman to care for my daughter. Her name is Mary Ann Spencer. She is 23 years old, came from the Bronx, never finished college because she needed to work to help her family. On paper, she wasn't the ideal candidate. No certifications, no specialized courses, no impressive references. The ballroom was in total silence, but Mary Ann had something no course teaches: true love. She took my daughter, a traumatized baby, who cried day and night, who didn't connect with anyone, and transformed her life." Sophia began to smile, to laugh, to be a child, and all because Mary Ann was present. Every day, every night, singing, playing, loving, without asking for anything in return. Robert saw Mary Ann there, still kneeling on the floor, holding Sophia, tears streaming down her face. And what did I do? I accused her of kidnapping. I let the police humiliate her. I let my ex-secretary, an obsessed and sick woman, sabotage her for weeks. I let the press destroy her. I let society judge her. And why? Robert paused. Because she is poor. Because she is an employee. Because she doesn't have an important last name or a bank account with many zeros. Murmurs began, but Robert continued, louder. But look what just happened. My daughter, a 1.5-year-old child, ran through this ballroom full of strangers and returned to whose arms? Not mine, not her grandmother's, not any of our peers present here. She returned to Mary Ann. Because children don't lie. Children know who truly loves them. Robert stepped down from the stage, walked to Mary Ann. He knelt beside her. "You can judge me. You can withdraw your investments. You can tarnish my reputation. But I will not stay silent while they destroy a woman whose only crime was loving my daughter better than I ever could." He looked at Mary Ann, and there were tears in his eyes too. "And if the price of defending what is right is losing everything I've built, then so be it. Because I finally understood that family is not about blood, money, or social status. It's about who stays, who fights, who loves even when it's difficult." The silence exploded into camera flashes, whispers, reactions. Some applauded. Others left indignant, but Robert didn't care. He picked Sophia up, helped Mary Ann to her feet, and the three of them left the ballroom together. A family. Perhaps not traditional, perhaps not accepted by everyone, but real. True. Built on love and not on conventions. The video went viral. Of course it went viral. In 48 hours, it had over 10 million views. The comments changed. "This made me cry. Everyone needs to see this. He publicly defended her. What a man. Us, the way the baby ran back to her. My heart can't take it." The narrative began to shift. Slowly, but it shifted. People who had judged Mary Ann began to retract. Some influencers who had shared the lies deleted the videos. Not all, because hate is always easier than empathy, but enough. Vanessa was sentenced to 2 years of house arrest and ordered to pay $300,000 in damages for emotional distress. The evidence was irrefutable. The cameras did not lie. She lost her professional license. Her name became synonymous with corporate sabotage, and the last Robert heard was that she had moved upstate, trying to rebuild her life away from the spotlight. Robert's mother, Beatrice, watched the event video. She watched her granddaughter run to Mary Ann. She watched her son defend that young woman with a ferocity she had never seen in him, and something in her, in that shell of prejudices built over decades, began to crack. She appeared at the apartment 2 weeks later. She rang the doorbell. Mary Ann answered with Sophia on her hip. "Mrs. Andrews," Mary Ann said, surprised. "May I come in?" They sat in the living room. Sophia, curious, watched her grandmother from afar, not quite sure what to do. "I came to apologize," Beatrice said, and the words seemed to cost her physically. "What I said to you was unforgivable. I was wrong. About you. About everything." Mary Ann said nothing, just listened. "I came from a generation where things were different, where everyone had their place, where mixing classes was complicated. Beatrice looked at her own hands, but watching my granddaughter prefer you over me, seeing my son willing to lose everything to defend you, seeing the genuine love in your eyes when you look at Sophia. I cannot deny that. I cannot pretend it doesn't exist. I love her, Marianne said simply, as if she were my own. I always will. I know. Beatrice looked at Sophia. May I hold her? Marianne nodded. Beatrice carefully took her granddaughter into her arms, and Sophia, after a moment of hesitation, nestled against her. It was a beginning. Small, fragile, but real. 6 months later, Robert proposed to Marianne. It wasn't in a fancy restaurant or a tourist spot. It was on a Saturday morning in the apartment, with Sophia building block towers on the rug and a simple coffee on the kitchen table. "Marry me," he said. Without preamble, Marianne almost dropped her cup. "What? Marry me? I want you to be my wife. I want to adopt you as Sophia's legal mother. I want to build a real life. No longer this awkward situation where you're an employee but also family." Robert held her hand. "I love you, Marianne. It took me a long time to realize it, a long time to have the courage to admit it, but I love you. I love how you laugh, how you sing off key, how you argue with me when I think I'm right. I love how you love my daughter. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you didn't make a wrong choice by staying." Marianne cried. She cried with happiness, relief, gratitude. And she said yes. The wedding was on the beach in the Hamptons on a golden late afternoon. Just 30 people, close friends. Marianne's family, who cried from beginning to end, Beatrice, who also cried, surprising everyone, and Sophia in a little white dress, carrying flowers and stealing the show as every child should. There was no pomp, no celebrity magazines covering it. It was intimate, true, perfect. When the justice of the peace asked if Robert accepted Marianne, he replied, "I do. Today and always." And when Marianne was asked, she looked at Robert, at Sophia running on the sand, at the life she had built against all odds, and said, "I do, with all my heart." Life didn't become a fairy tale. There were still difficult days. There were still people who judged. There were still moments where Marianne felt out of place at social events, where her accent sounded different, where her origins made her question if she truly belonged there. But then she would look at Sophia, now 3 years old, running through the apartment with loud laughter, calling her mommy without hesitation. She would look at Robert, working in his home office, stopping in the middle of an important report, just to play house when his daughter asked. She would look at Beatrice, who now visited weekly and had become the grandmother Sophia deserved. And she understood, family is not about where you were born or how much money you have. It's about who chooses to stay when it gets tough, who defends you when everyone judges, who loves you not despite who you are but exactly because of it. Marianne went back to studying. She went to college for education, graduated with honors. She opened a community school in the Bronx, where children from underserved families could study for free. Robert financed the project, but Marianne managed it, putting all her passion and experience into every detail. The school was named Sophia's House, in honor of the girl who had changed everything. And on the walls of the entrance there was a framed quote, "Love has no class, no color, no hierarchy. Love only needs courage." Sophia grew up hearing that story. The story of how her non-biological mother overcame prejudices, false accusations, cruel judgments, and still stayed. How her father learned that success is not measured in money, but in moments lived. How an untraditional family challenged society and proved that love is stronger than any social barrier. And when Sophia turned 10, at a simple party in the apartment, now decorated with photos, her drawings on the refrigerator, and the beautiful mess of a lived-in home, she gave a speech. "Mommy," she said, looking at Marianne, "thank you for not giving up. Thank you for loving me when I was just a scared baby. Thank you for staying." And Marianne, with tears in her eyes, hugged her daughter, not by blood but by choice, and that made all the difference. Today, almost 20 years later, that baby who once ran through a ballroom full of important people to return to the arms of the one who truly loved her, is an adult woman, a law graduate, specializing in human rights. She fights for the same people her mother once was, the invisible, the judged, those society insists on putting into boxes. Robert retired early. He sold part of the company, kept enough to live comfortably, and began working with Mary Ann at the community school. He discovered that being a volunteer financial literacy teacher for young people in underserved neighborhoods was infinitely more rewarding than closing million-dollar deals. Beatrice, before she passed away at 82, left a letter for Mary Ann. In it, she wrote, "You taught me that character is priceless, that dignity cannot be bought. That family is built with love, not status. Thank you for showing me the world beyond my walls of prejudice. Thank you for loving my son and my granddaughter with a purity I never knew how to give. You are the best thing that ever happened to this family, and I apologize for taking so long to see it." The story of the Andrews Spencer family is not about a millionaire who saved an employee. It's about an employee who saved a millionaire from an empty life. It's about a baby who taught everyone around her about true love. It's about a family that refused to follow the script society wrote for them. And above all, it's about courage. The courage to love without asking permission. The courage to defend what is right even when everyone says it's wrong. The courage to build a family not in traditional molds, but in the molds of the heart. Because in the end, love doesn't need a diploma. It doesn't need an important last name. It doesn't need social approval. Love only needs courage. And of that, Mary Ann always had plenty.